morning, everyone. Welcome to morning meeting. Today we are joined with George, our wood turtle ambassador. So as always, let me know where you guys are tuning in from today. If you guys have any questions, I'd certainly love to answer them. Otherwise, I'm going to put him down. We can take him for a walk. As you guys can see from this view right here, he is missing his two front legs. So George's story is pretty special. So he actually came to us as a patient almost 2 years ago now. A year and a half, 2 years. So when he came to us, we found out he had belonged to a school classroom for a little while. And when he was with them, he was missing his one of his front legs, which is pretty common for wood turtles. They do live in the wild with 3 legs. So they are threatened like most of our turtles here in Maine. So there are 7 species that we have. The wood turtles are one of the ones that are not doing great in the wild. So he was surrendered and given to us for rehabilitation. So we worked with Fish and Wildlife, Fish and Game, Unity College, a bunch of organizations to try to figure out if George could go back out into the wild with 3 legs. So we had worked with them pretty extensively, and we found out that, yeah, he could survive in the wild and be a wild turtle and do fine, hopefully. So he was with us for about 6 months, and then we released him, as part of a Unity study. So pretty much they had a little tracker on him, and they could see where he was going, and they would track him, go to find him and see where he moved to. So they would go and find him and then record where he was. So George actually traveled more than any wood turtle in the entire study, even with 3 legs, which is incredible. So they found him, however, the last time, with his other leg missing as well. So we believe his initial injury was being hit by a car. So I'll flip this so you guys can see. Because of that little notch that he has in his shell. So we think that when he lost that side, he was hit by a car. And then this is his other little nub. We believe he was probably caught by a predator or something like that. So that's when he was deemed non-releasable, and then he came back to us after about 6 months in the wild. So he's one of our newest ambassadors. We're still in the process of making him official, but we're really happy to have George in our ambassador family now, because he is non-releasable, unfortunately. So he is still getting used to humans and hanging out with us, but he's pretty incredible. He's a pretty large male on top of that, so we believe he was a pretty successful wild turtle, which is awesome. Good morning, Chuck from Rhode Island. Good morning, Yvette. Hi, Dad. So I'm going to put George down, and you guys can see him move around. Even though he is missing his front 2 legs, he actually moves really well. And can get around a lot faster than we would think. So I'm going to put him down so you guys can see that. Right, George? Ooh, you don't want to see me. You want to see the turtle. Bye, George. Where are you going? So he is semi-aquatics. We do see them on land and on the water as well. You can tell that from his shell. So he has a relatively flat shell compared to like our box turtles. You can tell he can swim pretty well. So he does have a little tub that he can go inside in his enclosure. So he can wade in there, but it's not deep enough so that he would get stuck or anything like that. Which makes him kind of sad, because he definitely loves to spend time in his little water ball. And when he was a patient, we actually had to purposefully dry dock him. Most of our turtles are really good about dry docking themselves. So they need to get dry every once in a while to make sure that their shell is healthy and they're not going to get fungus and parasites And so he actually had to be purposely dry docked, and we had to take his water, and he's very, very upset about it. So he does prefer his time hanging out in his little puddle. But if we go in there, then they can't see you. And you can see he has this beautiful orange coloring on him. There, let's go this way. Wait, no. Bud. Hi. So he's still getting used to us quite a bit. He can move pretty well for a two-legged turtle. Right, George? Where you going? So we actually estimate George is about 20 years old or so. Because he is a large male. Yeah. And just like a lot of animals, like if you think lions, the big strong males are the ones that are gonna be the father to all the cubs. So it's pretty similar in a sense with our wood turtles. So we can tell from his size that he was probably a very productive father in the wild, even though he would never meet his babies. Little turtles are only about the size of a quarter when they hatch, and they never meet mom and dad. Right? So mom will use those back legs to kind of dig a hole with her back feet and lay her eggs, and then she will leave them. So they will actually lay their eggs in what we call ancestral breeding grounds, which means that they're going to lay their eggs in the same place that mom was born, grandma was born, great-grandma was born, and goes back for centuries. So their GPS in their head is better than our phone. That's how they're going to get there. But, yeah. We're gonna go back over this way, because you just want to go play in the woods. Hello. You're so handsome, though. Let's go this way. So those quarter-size hatchlings will hatch, and they know exactly what to do. They know where to live, they know what to eat, they know everything they're supposed to do. So there actually is no such thing as an orphan turtle. Because they're fully on their own as soon as they hatch. Good morning, Jessica from Chicago. That's awesome. Yeah, he is pretty cool. So he is, I believe, our first wood turtle ambassador. Or if not the first ever, and definitely a really long time. So we're really excited to have him join our ambassador family with our reptiles. Right, bud? Where are you going? So if he were a healthy turtle, you could actually tell he's a male. A lot of our aquatic species, the males will have really long front claws that he obviously does not have anymore. And if you look at that tail, that'll give you a good indicator as well. So the boys tend to have a bit longer of tails, right? And then those front claws. We can't go play in the woods, I'm sorry. Good morning, Jessica. Hey, hi, George. So active. Yeah, so he spent the summer acclimating outside next to our other turtle ambassadors. He has a little enclosure right next to Henry and Skeeter and Ophelia and Blossom and Liz and our box turtles. So they're all kind of hanging over there together. Just kind of giving him some space to kind of figure out humans aren't so bad. He does get a similar diet to our box turtle ambassadors, so he gets a salad just like they do on a little platter. For him, we put it on a little slate or a little plate. You guys may have seen the bigger slate that we usually give our box turtles, just because there's 4 of them. But we do put his on a platter, so he'll get some shredded greens like kale or dandelion. so chard, stuff like that. Some tomato, which he really enjoys. Shredded carrot or squash, depending on what we have at the time. Some berries, or maybe some apple, and then some protein as well. So we do offer him a similar variation of diet to our box turtles. So he may get crickets, worms, mealworms, mice, fish. He really likes bloodworms as well. So it just kind of depends. We do try to offer them a variety to see what they like, especially because he is still pretty new with us. We are still learning the things that he really enjoys. So we know he really, really loves his tomatoes. So sometimes I give him a little bit extra than we normally would, just because he really enjoys it. But just like the other turtles, he does only get fed every other day, every couple days. Just because he is a reptile, so their bodies are much different than ours. So he can't keep himself warm or keep himself cool. So his body temperature is going to be in relation to what it is outside. So sometimes they'll adapt in the wild. They'll maybe go in the water, go underground. George. So during the summertime, our reptiles do spend some time outside during the day, but then they will come in. I'm not going to let them see. So you guys see how this little angle here, it's not very wide, but our wood turtles are actually known to kind of go all over onto their sides and be able to crawl sidewards, which has been documented a few times. We've seen him do it, try to do it on several occasions. It's pretty funny to watch. For those of you that have been to the center before, you might know of the fence that we have in front of Henry and Skeeter and Ophelia. So sometimes if we look away for a second, he may try to squeeze in there to go say hi to them. George, what are you doing? I'm so active. This is really good physical therapy for him as well. We do want to make sure that our turtles and all of our ambassadors are nice and healthy. So that includes some weight management, exercise. So he clearly can get around pretty well, even though he's missing those front two legs. It's nice exercise for him as well, and get the sunlight to make your shell nice and healthy. And our turtles and reptiles actually respond really well to environmental enrichment as well. So when we like to take them in particular for walks, because the grass and the rocks and all the plants that they can interact with, they really enjoy it. And so when we clean out their enclosures, we'll give them like new plants and new setups and new places to hide, and they really seem to enjoy it, which is always probably one of the best parts of taking care of these guys, seeing them really enjoy their homes and seeing what they are interested in and what they want to explore. Good morning, Naomi from Rhode Island. Welcome. Right? So these guys are one of our larger species that we have here. So he is much larger than our painteds or Percy or spotted or the box turtles. Let's not go that way so you don't hit yourself on the mesh. So he, just for reference, my hands. Yeah. So they just are one of our larger species. We do have them here in Maine. But like I mentioned earlier, most of our turtles here in Maine are threatened on some level, and that includes our wood turtles. Good morning, Kara. Could the cracks in his shell spread? So depending on the injury, because remember, under all these scoots, so all these little puzzle pieces, it's just bone. You can actually see on his scoots, they're really pretty. So all those little rings, they kind of remind you of maybe tree rings. and they actually grow the same exact way. So they have that center point from when they're born and they grow outwards. So that's one of the ways that we can take a good guess on how old he is. Sometimes we do have to put them under a microscope, sometimes to try to count them. But so we have a pretty good guess on how old he is, but that's one way you can tell with our turtles, because those little scoots will grow. And then under all those scoots is just bone. So you can see right where my thumb is, he has a line that goes down the back. On the inside of that is where his spine would be. So turtles cannot leave their shell. They're stuck with them for their entire lives. So he will have that crack. It's a pretty old injury. It's healed over now. Sometimes the bone will grow back. But there's a big enough dent in his that's probably why it didn't. But it has calloused and healed over, however, so. Right? I know. Sorry. I know, you're not overly thrilled. But under that is just bone. So when we get turtles into our medical clinic, depending on how bad the crack is, we can actually put, it's kind of like a human cast. It's a little metal bracket that we glue on. One part of the crack on one side and then on the other, and then we join them together. So it acts just like a human cast, so our turtles, just like our bones, do take a while to heal. So especially when that happens, they're going to probably be with us for several months. But sometimes we can do that depending on how bad the injury is. So his, however, did happen a really long time ago. And since it wasn't fixed initially, so he will have that the rest of his life. It's pretty much now just kind of grown over it. So we wouldn't expect it to re-break itself, but obviously if his enclosure were not set up properly, he could hurt himself, which we always want to avoid. So that's why all of our enclosures are specifically built for each ambassador, just so they can get around and they're happy, and so they're not going to get hurt. Naomi, we believe he's about 20 years old. He's been in captivity a good chunk of his life. So that was one of the factors that we were thinking of when he came to us. And when we were trying to figure out if he could be released, because he has been in captivity, we believe about 10 years now. And there's a kind of good rule of thumb, if a reptile, even though they're born with all that information that they need to survive, they know where they're supposed to live, they know where they're supposed to eat, they know where their home range is supposed to be. But they're born with all that information, and essentially then they forget it if they're kidnapped out of the wild. So it was, we were trying to figure out if it's a third of their total lifespan that could possibly live, or if it was a third of their present life. So we were working with researchers and trying to figure that out. So he had been released, and then unfortunately did come back to us. So we believe he's about 20 or so years old now. But he could live to be or 50 to 70 years. So we have very high hopes for him. Right? Okay. Oh, hello. See, it's a very long leg. Oh, God, I'm trying to show off your feet. Of course, then you tuck them in. Right? And you can see all that pretty orange that he has. It makes them unique. Different from our other ones. His shell is also a lot different than our other turtles. Right? I'm still getting used to all of this. I'm just gonna put him down again and let him walk around. It's what he mostly enjoys the most. Let's walk over here. a new place for you to say hi, explore. I know Bertram. Clearly he hasn't eaten yet, so it's very chatty. He really is like a dinosaur, Chuck. That's a great analogy. Of course, our reptiles and our modern turtles, snakes, birds, they all are relatives and cousins of dinosaurs, and that's definitely evident within our turtles in particular. Just pretty cool to see. I'd say maybe the snapping turtles have a bit more of a dinosaur-esque to them, but this wood turtles are definitely up there with them, with the level of dinosaur-ness, if that ever were an actual adjective, that they show. Even so, right now we actually have we have 3 wood turtle hatchlings that we were actually able to extract from a mom who had passed away, unfortunately. And then we incubated them. And we can actually do this. We'll put the turtles in an incubator and dirt, and then we'll raise them all to be females. Like I mentioned, most of our turtles here in Maine are threatened, so we do raise them to be girls. We can do that because they have temperature-dependent sex determination. So when mom uses those back legs to dig her nest, the warmer ones on top are going to be girls, and then the lower ones that are colder are going to be boys. And so we raise them all to be girls. So there's going to be more females to lay eggs in the future. But even the little hatchlings that we have, so we have 3 wood turtles, a couple spotted turtles, some painted turtle hatchlings right now. And even the hatchlings are very like, ugh, humans. They're kind of, I don't want to say standoffish, because they're still, like, they're wild animals. We don't want them to really like humans. But they definitely have very different personalities than the painteds or the spotteds. You're very much like a dinosaur. Right. Can I show off the beak clip? He's so handsome. Yeah, so you can see that little beak of his, just like a bird's. Chuck, birds are considered ancestral descendants of reptiles, I've been told. So they're more or less cousins. So I think, like, dinosaurs, like, reptiles in that age of the earth, those dinosaurs would have been descendants of our modern reptiles, as well as our birds as well. So, just cousins. We actually are starting to believe that we did have feathered dinosaurs in the later stages of the dinosaur age, and so those would have been closer cousins to birds than possibly our reptiles. But evolution's really cool, and we get to learn things all the time, and we're figuring out who's cousins and who is really a lot closer or a lot farther than we believed. Like our turkey vultures, for example, their closest cousins are like storks and stuff like that, which you would not necessarily think. But we know that because of genetics, which is really cool that we're always doing research. Now, Kara, he does live alone. So he is our newest ambassador. We're actually still in the process of making him official, just because COVID has thrown some wrenches in that, but he's definitely non-releasable. So that's why he is with us. But he does live alone. A lot of our reptiles are solitary outside of mating season. So that's really the only time in the wild they would see another turtle. We've never introduced him to the others, especially because he is so much larger. But of course we do have like our box turtles that live together, our painted turtles that live together. Um, but because of his personality and he's still getting used to humans and being an ambassador. So if we ever do even just introduce them on a walk, it probably would be a little while down the road just because he still is a bit wild. So you might have just heard him hiss. He's still getting used to humans and walking around. I know, Bertram. Good morning. Hi, handsome. Your breakfast is coming, I promise. I know. Because he is still getting used to humans, and he was a wild turtle, several months ago. So it would be a while before we possibly introduce them, even just on a walk. Just because he is so large and still that wild. Hey, handsome. So I'm actually going to put him back in his enclosure outside, just so you guys can see that. So you can see Henry's Porcupatio, Ophelia, and Artemis, and our other turtles. So this is where George is currently hanging out during the day. You can see he has his little water pan that he spends most of his day hanging out in. Then he'll just climb around. He does like to hang out inside his little hide, inside his log. So this is where he spends his days. Unless it's going to be thunderstorming, then he does have to stay inside, unfortunately, but he really prefers to be out here. So we do try to get him out as much as possible. Right, bud? So if you guys have any last questions, I'd certainly love to answer them. But otherwise, I'm going to go get everyone else fed and sign off for the day. Right, bud? As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in. And we will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone. Turtles may prey on each other, particularly hatchlings. That beak is pretty strong, just like a bird, like a raptor's beak might be. So they can crush their food, but it really depends on the size of the turtle. So they may, yes. Right, George? That's why we have to be careful, because you're a big, strong boy. So, have a great day, everyone, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Bye, George.